Hello, and welcome back to the Valerium Stories channel. The room is quiet tonight. Outside your window, the world has softened into indigo and shadow. Streetlights cast their gentle halos through curtains that breathe with the night breeze. You've settled into your favorite position, the one your body has learned over years of seeking comfort, and the weight of the day begins to dissolve into the mattress beneath you. This is the hour of transition, when consciousness loosens its grip and imagination stirs. Tonight's story isn't about dragons or distant galaxies, though it contains wonders just as profound. It's about a journey, not across space, but through time. A journey written in bone and blood, in the silent language of DNA coiled within every cell of your body. Make yourself comfortable. Let your breathing slow. And if you drift away before the final word, that's perfectly all right. The story will wait for you tomorrow night. Dr. Eris Thorne had always found sleep elusive. At 57, his mind remained a restless archive of fossils, field notes, and the quiet whispers of deep time. Tonight, after a day spent carefully brushing sediment from a newly uncovered hominin jawbone in the Ethiopian highlands, exhaustion should have claimed him immediately. Instead, he lay awake in his narrow camp cot, the thin blanket doing little against the mountain chill. The fossil, designated VT-881, had unsettled him. Not because of its age, approximately 2.8 million years, give or take a few millennia, but because of the haunting familiarity in its curve. The jaw belonged to Australopithecus afarensis, the same species as the famous Lucy, and holding it had felt less like handling an artifact and more like greeting a distant relative whose face you've never seen, but whose presence you've always sensed in your own reflection. Frustrated, Eris rose and stepped outside his tent. The African sky unfurled above him, a tapestry of stars so dense and brilliant it seemed to pulse with ancient light. He found his usual spot on a flat rock overlooking the valley and sat, wrapping his arms around himself. As he gazed upward, something unusual happened. The stars didn't just twinkle, they began to flow. Not across the sky, but through it, as if the firmament had become a river and he was watching millennia pour past like water over stone. A wave of dizziness washed over him, not unpleasant, but profound. The air grew thick with the scent of wet earth and unfamiliar blossoms. The rock beneath him softened, then shifted. When his vision cleared, he was no longer on a mountainside in Ethiopia. He stood in a forest unlike any he'd ever seen. Towering tree ferns, cycads with fronds like emerald spears, and a humid warmth that clung to his skin. The year, he would later understand without knowing how, was 375 million years before the present. This was the Devonian period, an age when life was learning to breathe air. Before him, in a shallow, weed-choked pool, something extraordinary was happening. A lobe-finned fish, Eusthenopteron, his scientific mind supplied, wasn't just swimming, it was pushing. Its muscular fins, more like primitive limbs than typical fish appendages, pressed against the muddy bottom, lifting its head above the water's surface to gulp air through primitive lungs. This wasn't an anomaly, it was necessity. Oxygen levels in these stagnant pools were low, and those individuals with stronger fins and the ability to extract oxygen from air had a survival advantage. Over generations, these adaptations would accumulate. The descendants of creatures like this would develop wrists, then fingers. Their gills would recede as lungs strengthened. They would become acanthostega, then ichthyostega, creatures caught between worlds, with both gills and lungs, fins and feet. And eventually fully terrestrial tetrapods would emerge, their skeletons bearing the unmistakable blueprint of their aquatic ancestry. One bone, the humerus, two bones, radius and ulna, many bones, carpals. And digits, a pattern repeated in the wings of bats, the flippers of whales, and the hands that would one day hold tools, write poetry, and cradle newborns. This fundamental homology, the shared structural plan across diverse species, would become one of evolution's most elegant signatures, revealing common descent even when function diverged completely. Eris felt a pull, gentle as gravity, and the Devonian forest dissolved into mist. He stood now on a windswept shoreline under a sky dominated by a smaller, fainter sun. The year, 541 million years ago. The Cambrian explosion was underway, not an explosion of fire, but of form. In the shallow seas before him, life was experimenting with body plans at a pace never seen before or since. Creatures with exoskeletons of chitin, with jointed limbs, with compound eyes on stalks, they appeared in the fossil record with startling suddenness. This rapid diversification wasn't magic, it was the culmination of earlier, softer-bodied experiments now made visible by the evolution of hard parts that fossilized well. Predation had likely driven this arms race. Once one creature evolved a claw or a jaw to consume others, defensive adaptations like shells and spines followed in response. The genetic toolkit for building complex bodies, the Hox genes that act as master switches determining where limbs, eyes, and segments develop, had been assembled, allowing for dramatic morphological innovation through relatively small genetic changes. Nearly all major animal phyla recognizable today made their first appearance during this window, establishing the foundational branches of the animal kingdom's evolutionary tree. Another shift. The air grew cold, bitingly so. Ice sheets stretched to horizons under a sky heavy with clouds. The year, 20,000 years ago. The last glacial maximum. Eris stood on permafrost, watching a small band of Homo sapiens move with practiced efficiency across the frozen landscape. Their bodies told stories of adaptation. Stocky builds to conserve heat, relatively hairless skin beneath tailored furs. A paradox explained by the need to dissipate heat during endurance hunting while retaining the ability to cover up in extreme cold. Their faces were ours, high foreheads, chins, delicate features, but weathered by a life of constant movement and vigilance. They carried spears tipped with carefully flaked stone, and one woman wore a necklace of wolf teeth and carved bone. Language flowed between them in soft consonants and vowels, a capacity that had evolved gradually, with anatomical changes like a descended larynx and fine neural control of breath, and tongue allowing for the complex, rapid modulation of sound that distinguishes human speech from other primate vocalizations. This ability to share abstract concepts, to plan collaboratively, to transmit knowledge across generations, cumulative culture, had become humanity's most potent adaptive tool, allowing rapid behavioral adjustment without waiting for genetic change. As Eris watched, a massive shape moved at the edge of vision, a woolly mammoth. Its shaggy coat dusted with frost, tusks curved like ancient scythes. The humans didn't attack immediately. They observed, communicated with subtle gestures, and positioned themselves with strategic patience. This wasn't brute force, it was intelligence applied through social coordination. And in that moment, Eris understood a profound truth. Evolution doesn't favor strength alone, or speed alone, or intelligence alone. It favors whatever combination of traits allows an organism to survive and reproduce in its specific environment at that specific time. The mammoth's size and insulation served it well in the Ice Age, but when climates shifted and human hunting pressure intensified, those same traits became liabilities. Extinction isn't failure, it's the natural counterpart to speciation in life's endless experimentation. The scene softened again. Warmth returned, along with the drone of insects and the scent of blooming flowers. The year, 100 million years ago. Cretaceous period. Eris stood in a forest dominated not by flowering plants, which were still relatively new innovations, but by conifers, cycads, and ferns. Yet scattered among them were the pioneers, early angiosperms with simple, unassuming blossoms. These plants were revolutionizing terrestrial ecosystems through coevolution with insects. A beetle, attracted by scent and color, crawled into a flower, inadvertently picking up pollen on its body. Flying to another bloom, it transferred that pollen, enabling cross-fertilization. Plants that produced sweeter nectar or more vivid petals attracted more pollinators and left more offspring. Insects that were better at finding and accessing these rewards thrived. This mutualism, this dance of reciprocal adaptation, would transform Earth's biosphere. Flowering plants would eventually dominate most terrestrial habitats, their radiation enabling the diversification of countless insect lineages, which in turn supported birds, mammals, and the complex food webs that characterize modern ecosystems. Evolution often progresses not through solitary struggle, but through partnership. A shadow passed overhead, not a bird, but something larger, with elongated fourth fingers supporting a membrane of skin. A pterosaur, gliding on thermal currents. Flight had evolved independently at least 4 times in Earth's history. In insects, pterosaurs, birds, and bats. Each lineage solved the problem of aerial locomotion differently. Insects with chitinous wings, pterosaurs with skin membranes stretched over elongated fingers, birds with feathers modified from reptilian scales, bats with skin stretched over elongated hand bones. This phenomenon, called convergent evolution, demonstrates how natural selection can arrive at similar functional solutions from different starting points when organisms face comparable environmental challenges. The physics of flight constrain the possibilities, but the evolutionary pathways to achieve it remain distinct, leaving telltale signatures in anatomy that reveal ancestry despite superficial similarity. The forest deepened around him. Giant dragonflies with wingspans of 2 feet patrolled the air, another consequence of higher atmospheric oxygen levels in the Carboniferous period, some 300 million years ago. With more oxygen available, arthropods could grow larger because their passive respiratory systems, tracheae, could supply sufficient oxygen to bigger bodies. When oxygen levels later declined, so did maximum arthropod size. Evolution is constrained not just by competition and predation, but by the fundamental chemistry and physics of the planet itself. Life adapts within boundaries set by atmospheric composition, temperature ranges, gravitational force, and the properties of water and carbon. Eris felt himself sinking, not downward, but backward, deeper into time. The air grew thick, warm, and carried the tang of salt. He stood at the edge of a primordial sea 3.5 billion years ago. No complex life existed here. No plants, no animals, not even visible cells to the naked eye. Yet life was present. In shallow tidal pools, simple organic molecules had assembled into self-replicating systems enclosed within fatty membranes, the first protocells. Through a process we call abiogenesis, not technically evolution, but its necessary precursor, non-living matter had crossed the threshold into biology. Once self-replication with occasional errors, mutations, emerged, natural selection could begin its work. Molecules that replicated more efficiently, that were more stable, that could harness energy from their environment. They became more numerous. This was evolution's first principle in action: variation, inheritance, and differential survival leading to adaptation. The entire drama of life's history rests upon this simple, inevitable algorithm operating over incomprehensible spans of time. Another transition, smoother this time. He floated in darkness, but not empty darkness. Within this void swam the ancestors of all complex life, single-celled eukaryotes. The year, 1.8 billion years ago. A pivotal moment was unfolding not through competition, but through merger. A larger archaean-like cell had engulfed, but not digested, a smaller bacterium capable of efficient aerobic respiration. Instead of becoming a meal, the bacterium became a permanent resident, a symbiont. Over generations, it lost its independence, transferring many of its genes to the host nucleus, but retained its ability to generate energy using oxygen. It became the mitochondrion, the powerhouse of eukaryotic cells. This endosymbiotic event, supported by overwhelming evidence, mitochondria have their own DNA, replicate independently, and resemble bacteria in structure, provided the energy surplus necessary for cellular complexity. Later, some eukaryotic cells would engulf photosynthetic cyanobacteria, which became chloroplasts, enabling plants to harness solar energy directly. Major evolutionary transitions often occur not through gradual modification alone, but through symbiotic mergers that create entirely new levels of biological organization. The darkness brightened into the soft green glow of a shallow sea 600 million years ago. Ediacaran biota drifted like living leaves and fronds, soft-bodied organisms with body plans unlike anything alive today. Dickinsonia, Sprigina, enigmatic forms that may represent early experiments in multicellularity, some possibly ancestral to later animal groups, others evolutionary dead ends. Multicellularity itself had evolved independently dozens of times, in animals, plants, fungi, red algae, brown algae, each time solving the challenges of cell adhesion, communication, and specialization. The transition from solitary cells to cooperative collectives opened new ecological possibilities. Larger size, division of labor, complex tissues. But it required evolving mechanisms to suppress cellular selfishness, to ensure most cells would forego their own reproduction to support the reproductive success of specialized germ cells. This tension between levels of selection, cell versus organism, remains fundamental to understanding cancer, aging, and the stability of complex life. Eris found himself walking now through a landscape of giants. The year, 150 million years ago. Jurassic period. Towering sauropods moved like living mountains, their necks weaving through stands of conifers. Nearby, a stegosaurus swung its spiked tail with casual menace. These were dinosaurs, not the slow, stupid reptiles of outdated museum displays, but active, complex animals. Many were likely warm-blooded or possessed intermediate metabolic strategies. Feathers, once thought unique to birds, had evolved first in small theropod dinosaurs for insulation or display, only later being co-opted for flight in the lineage leading to birds. Archaeopteryx, with its teeth, bony tail, and flight feathers, captured this transition perfectly. Birds didn't evolve from dinosaurs. They are dinosaurs, the only lineage to survive the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event 66 million years ago. When an asteroid struck near Chicxulub, triggering global wildfires, tsunamis, and an impact winter, non-avian dinosaurs perished, but small, feathered dinosaurs that could shelter in burrows or trees, eat seeds, and maintain body heat survived. Their descendants would eventually fill the ecological vacuum, radiating into the 10,000 bird species we know today. Extinction events, while catastrophic, reset the evolutionary stage, allowing new groups to flourish. The scene shifted rapidly now, epics flowing like water through his awareness. He witnessed the rise of mammals after the dinosaurs' fall, not as an immediate takeover, but as a gradual filling of niches. For 10 million years after the asteroid impact, mammals remained mostly small, shrew-like creatures. Only when ecosystems stabilized did they begin their extraordinary adaptive radiation, some returning to the sea as whales, their hind limbs shrinking to vestigial bones hidden within their bodies, others taking to the air as bats, others developing complex social structures and enlarged brains. The evolution of whales from land-dwelling artiodactyls, even-toed ungulates, is one of evolution's best documented transitions, with fossils like Ambulocetus, walking whale, showing intermediate forms with functional limbs capable of both walking and swimming. Vestigial structures, remnants of features functional in ancestors but reduced or repurposed in descendants, provide powerful evidence for evolution. The pelvic bones in whales and snakes, the hind limb buds in python embryos, the human coccyx, tailbone, goosebumps, a remnant of fur raising for insulation or threat display, and the recurrent laryngeal nerves detour in giraffes, looping down the neck and back up, a legacy of fish anatomy when this nerve served gill arches near the heart. He saw primates emerge in the Paleocene forests, small, nocturnal creatures with grasping hands, forward-facing eyes for depth perception, and relatively large brains. Arboreal life favored these traits. Grasping hands for moving through branches, stereoscopic vision for judging distances during leaps, intelligence for navigating complex three-dimensional environments and remembering fruiting tree locations. Over 60 million years, primates diversified. Some lineages developed full-color vision, likely an adaptation for spotting ripe fruit against green foliage. Others, like the ancestors of humans, gradually shifted toward terrestrial life on the expanding African savannas as climate change shrank forests and grew grasslands. This environmental shift imposed new selective pressures. Bipedalism, walking upright on two legs, evolved before significant brain enlargement, likely for energy efficiency during long-distance travel across open terrain, for better thermoregulation, reducing surface area exposed to direct equatorial sun, and for freeing the hands to carry food, tools, or infants. The fossil record shows this transition clearly, from facultative bipeds like Ardipithecus, 4.4 million years ago, to the more committed bipedalism of Australopithecus afarensis, 3.2 million years ago. With its forward-positioned foramen magnum, where the spine enters the skull, curved femur, and arched feet. Brain size began its dramatic expansion with the genus Homo around 2.5 million years ago. Homo habilis, handyman, had a cranial capacity of about 600 cubic centimeters, larger than Australopithecus, but still less than half modern human average. This increase correlated with stone tool manufacture, the Oldowan tradition, simple flakes and choppers used for butchering carcasses and processing plant foods. Tools extended human capabilities, but they also created feedback loops. Individuals better at making or using tools accessed higher quality nutrition, especially calorie-dense meat and marrow, supporting further brain development. Larger brains required more energy, consuming about 20% of resting metabolism despite being only 2% of body weight. So dietary shifts toward nutrient-dense foods were essential enablers of encephalization. Cooking, likely mastered by Homo erectus around 1.8 million years ago, increased the digestibility and caloric yield of food, further fueling brain expansion. This coevolution of biology and culture, tools enabling dietary shifts, enabling brain growth, enabling more complex tools, became a hallmark of the human lineage. Eris witnessed Homo erectus groups moving out of Africa nearly 2 million years ago, the first hominin to colonize Eurasia. They controlled fire, made sophisticated Acheulean hand axes symmetrical on both sides, suggesting mental templates and advanced planning, and likely possessed some form of proto-language. Their bodies were essentially modern in proportion, tall, lean, adapted for endurance running and walking across vast distances. Sexual dimorphism, differences in size between males and females, had decreased compared to earlier hominins, possibly indicating shifts toward more cooperative breeding and pair bonding. Around 400,000 years ago, the lineage split. In Africa, Homo heidelbergensis gradually evolved into Homo sapiens. In Europe and Western Asia, it evolved into Homo neanderthalensis, Neanderthals. These were not brutish cavemen, but sophisticated humans who buried their dead, created symbolic objects, used complex tool technologies, Mysterian, controlled fire expertly, and likely possessed language capacities. Genetic evidence confirms that when modern humans migrated out of Africa around 60,000 years ago, they encountered and interbred with Neanderthals. Non-African humans today carry 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA, a legacy of these ancient encounters. Some of these inherited genes conferred advantages. Variants related to immune function helped humans fight Eurasian pathogens, while others influenced skin and hair characteristics adapted to lower UV environments. Other hominin species crossed paths with our ancestors. Denisovans in Asia, Homo floresiensis, the Hobbit, on Flores Island, possibly others whose fossils remain undiscovered. The human family tree wasn't a straight line, but a braided stream with multiple branches, most now extinct. What made Homo sapiens ultimately dominant remains debated. Perhaps a slight cognitive edge, enabling more complex symbolic thought, more efficient projectile weapons. Broader social networks allowing information exchange across groups, or simply demographic advantages. Around 70,000 years ago, archaeological evidence suggests a symbolic explosion. Sophisticated art, personal adornment, ritual burial, and rapid technological innovation. This may reflect the gradual refinement of language to include complex syntax and recursion, the ability to embed phrases within phrases, enabling discussion of hypotheticals, past events, and abstract concepts. Language transformed human cooperation, allowing coordination of large groups of unrelated individuals through shared myths, norms, and plans, a capacity that would eventually enable agriculture, cities, and civilization. Eris saw the advent of agriculture 12,000 years ago, not as progress, but as an evolutionary trap that nonetheless reshaped humanity. Settling to cultivate crops led to population booms, but also nutritional deficiencies, infectious disease from proximity to domesticated animals and waste, and social stratification. Yet natural selection continued operating in this new environment. Lactase persistence, the ability to digest milk sugar, lactose, into adulthood, evolved independently at least 4 times in human populations with histories of dairy farming. In most mammals, the lactase enzyme switches off after weaning. Mutations keeping it active provided a nutritional advantage where milk was available, and these mutations spread rapidly in dairying cultures. Similarly, genes conferring resistance to malaria, like sickle cell trait in heterozygous form, increased in frequency in malaria-prone regions despite costs in homozygous individuals, a classic example of balancing selection where heterozygote advantage maintains genetic variation. Skin pigmentation evolved as a balancing act. Dark skin protects against UV damage and folate degradation near the equator. Lighter skin facilitates vitamin D synthesis in higher latitudes with lower UV exposure. These adaptations occurred relatively recently and rapidly as humans migrated across the globe, demonstrating that evolution didn't stop in the Pleistocene. It continues today, though cultural adaptation now often outpaces genetic change. He witnessed other ongoing evolutionary processes. The human appendix, once thought useless, likely serves as a safe house for beneficial gut bacteria that can repopulate the intestines after diarrheal illness, a vestigial structure with a repurposed function. Wisdom teeth often fail to erupt properly in modern humans because our jaws have shortened, possibly due to softer cooked diets, while tooth number remained unchanged, a mismatch between our evolved biology and our rapidly changed environment. Antibiotic resistance in bacteria demonstrates evolution in real time. Random mutations conferring resistance allow some bacteria to survive treatment and reproduce, passing resistance genes horizontally through plasmids as well as vertically. This isn't progress. Resistant bacteria aren't better in all environments, but adaptation to a specific selective pressure we've created. Eris observed the evolution of altruism, behavior that reduces an individual's fitness while increasing others. How could self-sacrifice evolve? Through kin selection, helping relatives who share your genes, and reciprocal altruism, helping non-relatives with expectation of future return. Vampire bats regurgitate blood meals to hungry roostmates who have shared with them previously. Humans evolved capacities for empathy, guilt, and reputation management that facilitate cooperation beyond kinship, essential for building the large-scale societies that characterize our species. Yet these same capacities create moral dilemmas our Pleistocene brains never evolved to solve: climate change, nuclear weapons, global inequality. Evolution shaped us for small-band cooperation in immediate environments, not for managing planetary-scale challenges with delayed consequences. He saw the future, not as prediction, but as possibility. Human-directed evolution accelerates through artificial selection, domesticating plants and animals, and now genetic engineering. But natural selection continues. Genes influencing age at first reproduction, disease resistance, and metabolic efficiency still affect reproductive success. Cultural evolution, transmission of information through learning rather than genes, now operates orders of magnitude faster than biological evolution, creating a dual inheritance system unique to humans. Our future may involve conscious direction of our own evolution, raising profound ethical questions. Yet the fundamental principles remain: variation, selection, inheritance. Whether operating on genes, memes, or algorithms, evolutionary processes shape complex systems across domains. The vision slowed. Eris found himself back on the Ethiopian mountainside, the fossil jawbone resting gently in his palm. Dawn was approaching, the sky softening from black to deep violet. He hadn't slept, yet he felt profoundly rested. The journey through deep time had not been a dream but a remembering, the recognition of his own place within life's unbroken continuum. The calcium in his bones, the iron in his blood, the oxygen he breathed, all cycled through countless organisms across billions of years. The neural circuits allowing him to appreciate beauty, to feel connection, to seek meaning. These were not accidents but products of evolutionary processes favoring social cohesion, curiosity, and pattern recognition in ancestral environments. He thought of the 3.5 billion years of continuous cell division connecting him to the first life, of the countless ancestors who survived drought, famine, predation, and disease to pass on their genes, of the genetic recombination in each generation shuffling the deck, creating unique individuals while maintaining the human form, of the shared DNA binding him to the lobe-finned fish pushing through Devonian shallows, to the small mammal hiding from dinosaurs, to the Neanderthal sharing a fire on a cold Eurasian night. Separation was an illusion. Individuality was real but temporary, a wave on the ocean of life, distinct yet inseparable from the whole. As the first sliver of sun breached the eastern horizon, painting the highlands gold, Eris understood that evolution wasn't a story of progress toward humanity. Humans weren't the goal. We were one recent expression of life's endless creativity, a species with unprecedented capacities for both destruction and compassion, for abstract thought and ecological short-sightedness. Our significance wasn't predetermined, but self-determined through choices made moment by moment. The same evolutionary processes that produced our capacity for tribalism also produced our capacity for empathy. That produced our drive for status also produced our yearning for connection. That produced our short-term thinking also produced our ability to imagine distant futures and act on their behalf. He returned to his tent as the world awakened around him. The calls of birds, living dinosaurs, the rustle of mammals in the brush, the photosynthetic hum of plants converting sunlight into life. He lay on his cot, the fossil carefully placed beside him, and finally sleep came, not as escape, but as homecoming. In dreams, he walked again through deep time, not as observer but as participant, his atoms cycling through ferns and fish and stars, his consciousness a bright flame in life's ancient fire. And as you listen now, in your own room with its own quiet darkness, know that you carry this same deep history within you. Your body is a living museum of evolutionary adaptations. The vestigial tailbone from tailed ancestors, the goosebumps from furry forebears, the recurrent laryngeal nerves deter echoing fish anatomy, the shared genetic code with oak trees and octopuses. You are not separate from nature. You are nature, conscious, curious, capable of wonder. The same processes that shaped the branching corals of ancient seas shape the branching neurons in your brain that allow you to hear this story. Evolution isn't just something that happened. It's something that is ongoing, dynamic, weaving the tapestry of life moment by moment. So let your breathing deepen. Let the day's concerns soften at the edges. You are safe. You are connected. You are part of a story billions of years in the telling. A story written in starlight and seawater, in bone and leaf, in the silent language of DNA coiled within you right now. There is no need to hold on tightly. You can rest. The universe has been unfolding for 13.8 billion years. It can continue without your vigilance for these few hours. Let go. Sink into the mattress as continents sink into mantle. Drift as seeds drift on ocean currents. Dream as life has always dreamed, of connection, of continuity, of becoming. The stars outside your window are the same stars that shone on the first cells, on the first forests, on the first humans gazing upward with wonder. They are distant suns, some with their own planets where life may be writing its own stories of adaptation and change. We are all made of stardust, animated by sunlight, connected through the unbroken thread of evolution. This is not poetry alone. It is scientific fact, the most profound and humbling story ever discovered. Your eyelids grow heavy now. Your muscles release their tension. The boundary between self and world softens. You are returning to the source, not death, but the deep rest from which all creativity emerges. Tomorrow you will wake renewed, carrying within you the entire history of life, ready to add your own small verse to its ongoing song. Sleep now. The universe holds you. Evolution continues in your cells as you rest. The quiet repair of DNA, the renewal of tissues, the consolidation of memories into neural pathways. You are both the product of deep time and a participant in its unfolding. There is nothing to fix, nothing to achieve in this moment, only to be, only to rest, only to trust the ancient rhythms that have carried life through ice ages and asteroid impacts, through oxygenation events and mass extinctions, to this gentle night, to this quiet room, to this breath, and the next and the next. Let go completely now. The story continues in your dreams, the endless, beautiful, unbroken story of life becoming, adapting, connecting, enduring. You are home. You are part of it all. You always have been. You always will be. Good night.